man, Marx, is going to be very controversial for anyone who has looked upon the history of the last century and has a heart for the suffering of the millions that were pulverized by the communist system. I wanted to say a few words about this particular piece on the Jewish question, which is a response to Bruno Bauer, who was a fellow young Hegelian at the time of the early 1840s. This was when Marx's rapid development from being a political liberal to becoming a communist was occurring. That music, by the way, is from Mendelssohn, and that's apposite because he's a delightful composer. His music is just beautiful, and he was important for many reasons. He was a prodigy, but he helped reintroduce the music of Bach to Europe, which obviously is an inestimable gift. But even on this question of the status of Jews, his life is kind of an example. His family had assimilated, meaning had given up its Jewish identity to participate in the civic and social life of Germany. His grandfather was actually Moses Mendelssohn, the great Jewish philosopher. So there's a lot of very powerful linkages here to be drawn, but I don't think we have enough time to go into all of that. So let me set the stage. Last year I read out a poem, and I think it's kind of important to do so because one doesn't want to talk about the Jewish question without considering, of course, the what is it? I mean, there are no words, right? The final solution of the Nazis was a solution to the Jewish question. So we have to be able to distinguish the historical phases of this trajectory. But the fact is, even the asking of the question was dangerous in the first place, right? To take the existence of the Jewish community as somehow problematic was already dangerous. Now, that said, for those of us who are religious, the election of the people of God, of Israel, in fact, does put into the world a community that stands apart. And those of you who've read Walker Percy's The Thanatos Syndrome will remember Father Smith's very powerful disquisition on the unassimilability of the Jewish people, and that was a provocation to those who want to stamp out the sign of transcendence. But anyway, there's a great poet named Paul Celan who ended up having suffered from the effects of the Holocaust. He ended up committing suicide, but he wrote great poetry, and one of them is called Tenebrain. This is my own translation. Near are we, Lord, near and manipulable. Manipulated already, Lord, clawed into each other as though the body of each of us were your body, Lord. Pray, Lord, pray to us, we are near. Oblique, we went there to bow towards cavity and crater. To the watering hole we went, Lord. It was blood, it was what you shed, Lord. It glistened. It threw your image into our eyes, Lord. Eyes and mouth stand so open and empty, Lord. We have drunk, Lord, the blood and the image that was in the blood, Lord. Pray, Lord. And for those of us who are observing it, I think that's a very good poem also for Ash Wednesday. But a few points about this particular essay, which was published in 1843. Obviously, it's very, a key concept here is that of civil society, bürgerliche Gesellschaft. I didn't get to speak about it enough, I think, last week with Hegel, but it's Hegel's conception of civil society that Marx is using. It's not the Tocquevillian notion of voluntary associations or anything. That it's it's the market economy. It's the fact that in the shift from the feudal to the industrial economy, we have to get our work by selling our labor, and that's Hegel in the piece we read last week basically takes the fact that we have to surrender our individuality, give up some of our desire for fulfilling work, and taking jobs in being plugged into the system of needs, as he calls it, that's part of education of the individual into universality, right? But Marx doesn't buy that. He finds this all a matter of profound alienation. That is, when we submit our labor to the wage system, we're actually becoming dehumanized. And there's this passage from the Economic and Philosophic manuscripts of 1844 that express this, and it's worth hearing. The more the worker exerts himself, the more powerful becomes the alien objective world which he fashions against himself. The poorer he and his inner world become, the less there is that belongs to him. It is the same in religion. The more man attributes to God, the less he retains in himself. The worker puts his life into the object, and it no longer belongs to him, but to the object. The externalization of the worker in his product means not only that his work becomes an object, an external existence, but also that it exists outside him, independently, alien, an autonomous power opposed to him. The life he has given to the object confronts him as hostile and alien. Now, we have to stick in there. I mean, whether he seems to be saying there that there's something about work that's dehumanizing. He doesn't believe that. It's labor under the conditions of capitalism, where the wage system, where the product of our labor becomes alienated from us. His vision of human fulfillment, and that's why we're dealing with it in this series on how should we live. How should we live if the way we meet the need to eat is by being involved in a process of capital that in fact alienates us from our talents or maintains grotesque inequalities in society? And that is, I think, a question to be asked. And his vision of society is not political, of human fulfillment. It's not, in the end, it's not Aristotelian at all. There's no politics in the final state for Marx. It's a matter of somehow finding our productive life in a condition in which it's not alienating anymore. And so it's that civil society becomes, in fact, it has to be transformed for us to be truly emancipated. So that's going to be the background. His fight with Bruno Bauer hates the Christian state. Prussia at the time was, the established religion was a united Protestant, that is both Lutheran and Reformed church. And Bauer is against any establishment of religion, of course, because he thinks, as all the young Hegelians did, that religion was an alienating force. Marx believes that, but he thinks it's kind of beside the point. At this point, he's moving beyond the critique of theology, he's moving beyond the critique of philosophy, he's moving on to the critique of economics. That's the big shift that Marx puts in. And so you go from the Christian state to the Freistaat, the free state, which is what Bauer wants. And Marx is saying, what are you doing? This is beside the point. In fact, the state itself, as we've got it, even the secular state, is going to be alienating. And so that's going to be the conversation we have tonight. And Emma, I think you'll read the questions for us.
Yeah, so the first question, Marx indicates that fellow young Hegelian Bruno Bauer is overly fixated on the fight against religion, staking political emancipation on the abolition of religion. In what ways does Marx think this analysis deficient? What is the distinction Marx draws between the citizen and the human as such? Number 2, though Marx is no friend of religion, his target in this essay is not religion. He thinks there is a fatal flaw even in the secular state. What would that be? In a modern republic with a separation of church and state, where does religion live its life? What is civil society? Number 3, why does political emancipation not produce full human emancipation, according to Marx? What would that full emancipation look like? Why is politics ultimately irrelevant? And number 4, does Marx have a point about natural rights, such as the rights to private property and freedom of conscience, tending to propagate an anti-communal individualism? Is political liberalism atomizing? Is identity politics of right or left compatible with devotion to human species being?
Thank you, Emma. And one last terminological point that and it's probably going to answer a question some of you have had. You know, Marx has always critiqued the bourgeois. That comes from the bürgerliche Gesellschaft. The burgher was the town dweller. But the town dweller, as we may recall if we follow the series of the Middle Ages, the town dweller is marked by a different way of life than the feudal agrarian the lands that occupy most of the geography. The town dweller is living in a space defined by merchant activity, by commerce. And so when you hear bourgeois, it means it's a gesture towards urbanization, and the citizen in the town, in the free city, for instance, but it's also shading off into the one who is bringing about the new capitalist economic order. All right.